Texas, Mr. Green is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank the ranking member as well. Mr. Chairman, members and friends, Northwestern University published an article styled "Racial Discrimination in Mortgage Market Persists Over Last 4 Decades." But they go on to indicate in a subtitle, "Discrimination in Housing Markets Sees Decrease During Same Period of Time." This was published on January 23rd of 2020. Let me read an excerpt from the article. In the mortgage market, the researchers found that racial gaps in loan denial have declined only slightly, and racial gaps in mortgage cost have not declined at all, suggesting persistent racial discrimination. Black and Hispanic borrowers are more likely to be rejected when they apply for a loan and more likely to receive a high-cost mortgage. The question that I have for you, dear friends, is one that has haunted us and continues to haunt us to this very day. And it is this: what are we going to do about the invidious discrimination in mortgage lending that allows a person who is more qualified, person of color, more qualified than a white person, to receive a loan at a higher interest rate and receive less in the amount of the loan? Ms. Marcellin, what can we do to correct this injustice?
Thank you, Congressman Green. First of all, I know the CFPB has been kind of talk of the town, but going back to them, they just shoring up their authority in this space. Going back to mortgage lenders, a lot of them being non-banks. The CFPB just released their non-bank supervisory guidance, making sure that that is strong as possible. That's one thing Congress can do. They were recently, filed a lawsuit against them upgrading their UDAP practices to prevent this sort of thing, discrimination by disparate impact, making sure that, we are out there really educating consumers on what the CFPB can do and making sure that then when battles come their way, when folks are looking to undermine the agency, that we are shoring up their authority in these various spaces.
Mr. Reuter, what can we do to correct this injustice?
Congressman, we have a very robust fair lending program at our bank. We're also regulated.
If I may just intercede, please, I don't mean to be rude, crude, and unrefined, but could you not address your bank and please address the injustice?
Yes.
The injustice, thank you.
The entire industry is heavily regulated and tested for fair lending. The #1 originator of mortgages in the United States the last year was Intuit. With their Rocket Mortgage. They do not have the same robust supervision and regulation as the banking industry. So I think like activities with like regulation would be a good place to start as well.
Let me make a couple of suggestions. Having lived a good deal of my life as a person of color and having experienced exactly what I've called to your attention, as a matter of fact, I and 3 other lawyers received a loan, paid it back early, never missed a payment, went back to get another loan, had a different loan officer, and that loan officer denied us a loan and told us we shouldn't have received the first loan. So this is something that I have personal knowledge of. It happens. And I'm grateful that you haven't denied this, because many members of Congress would deny it. So I'd like to place in the record, if I may, Mr. Chairman, my Fair Lending for All Act. It establishes criminal penalties for violations of prohibited credit discrimination and establishes an Office of Fair Lending within the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Here's something that was inspired by Ms. Beatty.
Without objection.
Thank you. Inspired by Ms. Beatty, and I'm so grateful to her. She's been a wonderful chairperson when she had the mantle. The Securities and Exchange Atonement Act, which requires insurers of securities to carry out a racial equity audit every 2 years regarding their diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as direct or indirect ties to slavery. The next would be my Promoting Diversity and Inclusion bill, Diversity and Inclusion in Banking Act, requiring regulators to include diversity in their assessment of depository institutions on the Uniform Financial Rating System or comparable rating system. Mr. Chairman, if I may have a unanimous consent on one last bill, it is a unanimous consent request.
Yes, the gentleman's time has expired, but real quickly.
Thank you, sir. The Housing Fairness Act, which mandates that HUD conduct a nationwide testing program to direct and document housing discrimination.
Yes, without objection.
Thank you for your kindness.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Norman, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My good friend Al Green I like, but I hope each one of you can fire back and kick back on some of these allegations to bring up slavery, to bring up not getting loans because of your color. I sat on a bank board for 20 years. Credit scores apply to everybody. You're in a competitive business. You have stockholders to answer to. This constant drumbeat is really getting tiresome to hear them day in, day out talk about discrimination. We'll fight, the regulations, his bills, because it makes no sense.
The gentleman called my
being
name.
said,
The gentleman yield
Let me
10 seconds
I
to
will
me.
not. It's my time.
Yes, sir.
Let me, how do I handle? We had a situation where a wire transfer was a fraud that a bank had. When I asked why we're not, what mechanism do you have among banks? They didn't want it out because of obvious reasons, the devaluation of stock and that type thing. Am I missing something? Is there some other line of communication that banks have? The insurance kicked in, but guess who's paying the insurance? The banks. So in any of, doesn't matter, any of you could address that.
Congressman Norman, I would say I would agree with Congressman Green that discrimination where it does exist must be vigorously fought. I don't know if I would agree with all of his proposals, but I think one place where
I'm asking about the fraud. I'm asking about how we, the instance I mentioned was about the wire transfer, and that's a breach, and the insurance paid off. But what I'm saying is, and I get the banks could not let it out because of the publicity and stock devaluation, but is there other things that we can be doing to help get the word out with that?
I think I can't speak, I don't know about that specific incident. I think what everyone in Congress could be doing is making it easier for all types of de novo banks, including minority-owned de novo institutions, to open so that there would be more, so that consumers would have more choices, and as a result, people would be treated more fairly, and have and underserved areas would have more choices and be able to have an easier road to prosperity.
Anybody else have any? Okay, Mr. Riders.
Congressman, we do see this where someone will intercept an email and impersonate that there's someone in their office and ask them to send a wire. So we do robust education. We have technology in place to look for unusual wire activity. We also hold forums for our customers, a lot of our business customers, to educate them on the risks. And given the fact that we have a strong cybersecurity team, we spend time with those customers' teams to help educate. So again, I would call that the great work of a community bank on the ground, bringing people in and educating.
Let me just cover the regulations that I think by this administration are strangling banks. The FDIC cited banks for non-sufficient funds, NFS fee, the CFPB. You're talking about a rogue organization that's gone off on its own interpretations, unfair, deceptive, and abusive acts. What's the impact of this having on operating a bank that's got to operate for shareholders, both black, white, red, it doesn't matter? How is this affecting the banks?
It absolutely affects the capital and the dollars we have available to make advances and solve for some of the customer issues that we face every day. So clearly has an impact.
And does it have you, and I don't have much time, doesn't it doesn't it force banks to pull services that ordinarily they wouldn't have to do if they didn't have to deal with this?
Correct. There's some banks that simply get out of lines of business because of the increased cost.
Well, I appreciate what each one of you do, taking your time today, and
Would
I'll
the
yield.
gentleman yield for a point of
I'll yield.
clarification on his statement?
Mr. Green. Mr. Green, I think, asked for.
Thank you for your kindness. I will extend a similar courtesy to you some point in the future, I'm sure. My dear brother, for many people, invidious discrimination is a term. For others, it is a way of life. Northwestern University accorded us this intelligence. It's not something I compiled on my own. And there's much more to be said about the empirical evidence.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Caston, is now recognized for 5